Kaylee. Yes, so we have two of the leading experts in this field willing to talk in public with us, and one of our contenders. We have Dave Lewis. He is the Chief Scientific Officer at Redgrave Data, formerly Executive Vice President, AI Research, Development, and Ethics at Reveal Brainspace. Dave has also held research positions at the U of C, University of Chicago, Bell Labs, and AT&T Labs. Uh, Dave is a co-trustee of the EDRM Working Group on AI Ethics and Bias, and he's served on the executive committee for the International Association for Artificial Intelligence and Law and on the Seventh Circuit Electronic Discovery Pilot Program Committee. He earned his BA in math and a Bachelor's of Science in Computer Science from Michigan State University and a PhD in Computer Science from the University of Massachusetts at Amherst. My goodness, Dave, that is quite a CV. Welcome, welcome.
Here.
And our friend Ralph Losey. He is an arbitrator, special master, mediator of computer law disputes, and also an attorney and partner in Losey PLCC. It's a high-tech law firm with not one Losey, but three Loseys. We just love that, Ralph. And the Losey firm, handles projects, deals, IP, litigation all over the U.S. And Ralph has been a long-time technical, hands-on attorney. He's presented at hundreds of legal conferences all over the world and has written over 2 million words on e-discovery and tech law subjects, including seven books. And to hear Ralph's journey, check out his podcast on the Illumination Zone on July 21st and May 16th, July 21st, 2021, May 16th, 2022. Ralph is an EDRM Global Advisory Council leader and one of the most popular EDRM bloggers, and of course his own eDiscovery team blog. Ralph, we are so pleased to have you here, and you are going to be our lead off in this conversation, are you not?
Well, I'm happy to. Thank you for having me on here. And, I thought it might be fun to, have a play off the old joke, somebody walks into a bar. And I just got back from a long vacation with my brother, who is a scientist, not in AI, but we went into a lot of bars together and had some great talks about, including many things, AI. And, I've known David Lewis many years and know he's one of the top authorities out there. And I like to hear from the real experts, from the scientists themselves, in order to inform, my legal view on it. And we don't always agree on stuff. We have our different perspectives. I'm here playing a lawyer today and, wore a jacket and channeling Steve Jobs. And David is channeling, one of the latest scientists with the hoodies, We're both white-haired guys, have been around a long time, seen a lot of it. In fact, we were just reminiscing, David was, for a brief period, was opposing expert in the case I had a great time with, the Silva Moore case. And he was actually on the other side, so, we never had a chance to duke it out too much. But today we're going to talk about, the thing I've been waiting for a long time. I mean, I've been following technology since law school, and I hate to tell you, but late 70s. And, I remember AI was going to be a big thing in the 90s, and then sort of petered out, never showed up. Turn of the century, no AI. I mean, I've been waiting a long time. Fortunately, I'm living long enough to see it because it's here. AI has finally got to the point where it's useful and is going to grab the attention. I mean, of course, predictive coding was a form of AI. I don't mean to sell that short, active machine learning, and that was terrific. I mean, I got all sparkly-eyed about that. So did Dave and the whole profession. But this is something different. This is now a different kind of AI, and it's not exactly the droids you've been looking for. I'm a big Star Wars, thus these are not the droids you're looking for. Well, they're almost the droids we've been looking for. This is not general intelligence. There is no machine and real intelligence there, but boy, it sure looks good. The way they can take all of the words they've read, more words than any human being has ever read. trillions and trillions of words. I mean, the whole Library of Congress, you know, a million times over, a billion times over, who knows? You just can't, it's astronomical. The number of words, and it's seen the order that the words go in. And as a result, and then connecting in, trying to emulate the neural net of our own brain in ways that maybe Dave can explain to us, but as I understand, it's pretty black boxy a little bit. But anyway, it then generates words that are just, sounds just like a human, can fool most humans. And so, but it's not quite there yet. There's a lot of things wrong with it. This is still early days, but at the rate it's going, I mean, it started in November when I first got aware of the 3.5, and then seems years ago, but was it early May or was it late April when 4.0 came out? And wow.
March, I think. I think mid-March.
Mid-March, okay. I mean, what a huge improvement from November to March. And you know, people are thinking, what about 5.0? Who knows? But this is something that if you haven't looked at it yet, you should. It is very interesting, and I encourage all tech lawyers, everybody in the field of technology and law, is something that they need to check out. So that's my, you know, my fundamental message there. And you know, I'll pause for a minute, let Dave give a reaction.
Yeah. So I think the fundamental change that we've seen since last fall is the public availability of what's called generative AI. So, you know, if you think back to, you know, AI that many of us are familiar with from technology assisted review, you essentially are taking human created content in and you're putting some sort of simple prediction out. Is this document responsive or not responsive, or maybe a probability, things like that. And the difference in generative AI, and generative AI has emerged, you know, over the past 5 to 10 years. The difference in generative AI is that the AI system is creating some sort of complex artifact, whether that's a document or an image, or say in biology, maybe a molecule that might be a good drug, but it's creating complex things. And the way it does that, so Ralph talked a lot about ChatGPT, and the technology, the generative AI technology under that is called a large language model. It's trained on gigantic amounts of text that have been produced by human beings, and it's essentially training a model to imitate texts that have similar statistical properties as the text that human beings create. And, you know, I think the surprising thing has been how good a text you can get that way by using fantastic amounts of input, or how, I mean, it's been a little less amazing what you get on the image side in terms of how good an image you can get, but it's still pretty startling that you can do things like, you know, type in a description like, you know, show me, you know, 2 people walking into a bar, you know, with Mars, you know, rising in the background or something like that. And, you know, it'll do a plausible job. It won't be as good as a good artist would create, but it's definitely sort of mapping from the text to the images. And then, you know, I think probably the big thing I would say is ChatGPT is a certain kind of conversational interface on top of a large language model. And there's been a lot of training of that conversational interface beyond the training of the large language model, so that it reproduces the structure of human conversations. But I think one thing that we'll get into later in the discussion is large language models are very interesting even without conversational interfaces. And it's likely that many of the uses in the law will not actually take the form of conversations. The large language model will be built into document production systems of various sorts, which will be much more structured. So that's probably enough on that for now.
Well, I like to keep it interactive, and you know, when lawyers and scientists go into bars, there's usually something they're going to disagree with. And at least my brother and I did. And you know, the one thing you said that I don't agree with really is about the images. And maybe you've only had a chance to work with DALL-E, but you go to, and you take a look at Mid-Journey, what it does with images. And I'm an image guy. Those of you who read my blogs for all these years, thank you very much. But you'll know I was always trying to get images, and I'm a Photoshop expert since the 90s or whatever. And I am so blown away with what Mid-Journey can do, which I understand is, large language model based upon images and word descriptions. And if you go to my website, I spend now as much time working on images because words can only convey the rational side. We used to talk about left and right brain, right? And as lawyers, if you get sophisticated into persuasion and how to impact a jury or a judge, you can't just use the rational side of the words. You got to have emotion there. You've got to reach people on a feeling level to persuade them of anything. And to be a true lawyer, you have to do that. And same thing with writing. You not only need the word part, and it has to make sense and can't be hallucinatory, and it can't be too short or too long, but you need to convey the subliminal message, if you will. And that's what images are so powerful for. And that's what artists have been doing throughout the centuries. And the fact that I can now create an image and tell it to be in the style of Rubens or in the style of Picasso. I mean, it just, sure, there are some artists that could probably do that, but very few. And so I think, if anything, the art and image side is progressed even faster than the word generation side. And I'm thrilled by that. So that was my one minor point. But I agree with you. If you're just dealing with DALL-E, yeah, it's okay. But it's not like, but Mid-Journey, and you got to get on Discord to do that. And it's kind of a pain in the neck. But I'm telling you, it is astounding. And those of you like me who love art, check it out, because it's pretty incredible what it can do. So a little bit of pushback on you, Dave, not too bad.
Yeah, I think it depends a little on the kind of image you're creating. It's very, I've played with Midjourney. It's very good on images of which there are a large number of similar examples out on the web. I'm not going to comment on how good it is at imitating artists' styles. And anyway, I thought they turned that off for copyright reasons.
No. And let's not get into copyright. That's a whole other, we should, get me on. I have many opinions about that. I'm a lawyer. But yeah, let's not go into that.
Yeah, but I'd like to press you on something, because, the number one thing that when I talk with potential clients about uses of LLMs, I very quickly get into, all right, let's look at what your current cost structure is for producing, say, a certain kind of document. And let's think about what sort of efficiency you would actually have to get from the part that an LLM can do in order for this effort to be worthwhile. So I know, Ralph, you feel very much that ChatGPT has helped you in your blog writing. I guess I'm curious if you've done kind of an analysis of, like, before and after. Like, how much time did it take you to write a blog post? I don't know to what extent you've got historical records, and then, have you gotten any external feedback on quality? Because this is all these things are a kind of cost quality trade-off.
Well, I'll turn to Mary. She's seen before and after.
Ralph, I have seen before and after, and I seem to remember when you used to put out a magnum opus every week. I think it was on Sunday. You would put music on, and you would share the music on the blog post that you were listening to while you were creating, in addition to the images. So what I've seen is, well, number one, Ralph is allowing EDRM to publish and republish if he goes first some of his work, and we are just absolutely grateful for that. But Ralph, let me just say, you're going more than once a week these days. You're just like, boom, 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 boom. And the artwork, oh my word, the artwork is stunning and evocative. And so I see you, Ralph, exploring a whole new way of writing prose that has the images interspersed to draw the emotional arc of the piece. And so I'm just absolutely loving it. But time wise, Ralph, I see the volume. Are you just like not sleeping and like constantly typing?
I, I mean, I haven't. I'm too busy creating stuff, Dave, to do what you guys do and sit back and analyze what other people have done. But I mean, I'm sure people can do that. I mean, and I'm telling you, as a personal experience, it's like my mind is on fire. I mean, it's like it's so invigorating to have a tool like this, a writer's tool. This isn't so much lawyer, but you know what? We lawyers, particularly litigators, trial lawyers, are trying to I don't know, defend the Constitution, things like that. It's not just a rational game. It's about bringing in the whole person. And so I've always wanted to have the kind of images I now have now. And the truth is, I spend as much time with the images, and too many images, I suppose, but I love them. And I could be generating twice as many articles if I didn't keep, in my opinion, I try real hard to maintain the integrity and the value. And I know there's plenty of lawyers that read this and would just love to point out mistakes that I made. And so I feel like my stuff gets peer reviewed every time I publish because I'm a law blogger. And lawyers are not shy. And I've got my reputation. You know, I've been doing this all my life. So I'm very careful. But having said that, when I first started using ChatGPT-3, I didn't understand its limitations, Dave. And I don't know if you saw one blog, I took it down. I was so embarrassed later because I didn't know that you couldn't ask it stuff after what happened after November 21 or whatever, or whenever the date was limited.
Yeah, they cut off of the training. Yeah.
Yeah, and I could not, and I also didn't know the danger of hallucination. So I asked it for the heck of it, write up the top 10 cases for 2022. And then, and I'm going, oh, this is great. It's really, this is what a great tool. I can just rely on this. And I published it too soon. I recognized many of the cases, and then I realized later on, wait a minute, these were all 2021 cases. Why is he calling them the top 2022? This was like, the end of 2022 or something like that. And then I started looking at it, and Maura Grossman, I think, says, Ralph, these are not 2022 cases. And I looked at them more closely. That's a good thing. I've been doing it so long. I have a lot of friends in the community. And hey, you think I got something wrong? Tell me. I want to get it right. This is, my life work is to get this stuff right. And I found out that good old ChatGPT totally made up a case. Just like we recently saw in the Southern District, just made it up as one of the top e-discovery cases of 2022. And I started looking at it, it seemed so plausible. And then I looked at it, and not only did it make up the case and the facts of the case, it made up the judge. And I looked very carefully. I went back to old-fashioned Google and said, there's no judge in the country with the name of that judge. So, I mean, it was inventive. And, how did it, just through generating old text, have the imagination to come up with a whole new cogent and to come up with a whole new judge. So since then, I've been very careful, and I totally agree with, I think these lawyers in New York should be sanctioned because of their footnote, I think it was 29 or something, where they try to, back off on it. And I totally agree with the new judge in Texas in his saying the attorneys need to certify if they use it, they checked it. I mean, I know this from personal experience. This little critter will lie to you, and you cannot rely on it. Hey, I would never file anything in court that I asked a new associate to do. And ChatGPT is only not even a year old. I would never do it without checking it first. I like to believe that there's some value in having done this for decades, and so it's the same thing as having like a law clerk doing for you. Do a terrific job, but still you would check it. So I think what's going on in the Texas court and New York court just underscores the importance to check it out, but it doesn't mean it's not still valuable. So that's my attitude on it for work. It's not as big an impact, Dave, to answer your question. I don't think we're quite there yet on the software, but I'm looking at software now and evaluating it, but I'm not rushing to any conclusions, although I have seen.
Yeah, I mean, you sort of anticipated my question, which is I was curious if you had used ChatGPT for producing like legal briefs, and your sense of, and it sounds like your sense is that the efficiencies for generating, blog content, which is, maybe long on opinion and less on precise facts that need to be checked.
Careful now, Dave. You're on thin ice, but go ahead.
As opposed to, say, a legal brief where you really have to sort of absolutely check every fact there.
Well, I check every fact, but I will tell you it has never been used for a legal brief.
Okay.
And we're not there yet. As good as it is, we're better. Go humans, go skilled attorneys. It's not at our level yet. Maybe the level of beginning people right out of law school. It could pass the bar exam, but you can't pass the bar exam and suddenly start writing briefs for our firm or your firm, David, or any prestigious or top quality firm. It just doesn't work like that. It's not at that level yet. And will it ever be that way? I don't think so, honestly. I believe in the hybrid model of humans and computers working together. I'm not looking for a brain implant like some people I know, but I believe that humans have a special spark and special ability, and so I'm not looking to displace lawyers. I'm looking to integrate.
So Ralph, we had a question, and I think I know the answer based on what you said, that you haven't been using it for brief writing, but you have an opinion on if there would be an efficiency around, and so just time-wise, personally writing a brief versus proofreading and correcting the legal docs that were generated by the AI?
What I have used it for is when I needed to find out a legal answer to a legal question right away. And there I can have it generate an internal brief that I use and may share with other lawyers. I mean, it's unbelievable. I mean, it just did what would take me 5 hours, even with the latest computerized research. It does it very quickly. But that's different than an out-facing brief. And so I treat them very differently. So I don't, will we get to the point when we rely more and more on it in briefs? Certainly. I mean, I did not hesitate when I got my hands on automated word processing software. But I remember when it was all done on IBM machines, typewriters and dictaphones and my handwriting. And I did not hesitate to use I was one of the first people out there. I forget what it was called. It was before WordPerfect, Barrister or something like that. But you probably remember it. But yeah, so I'm not as big a rush as I was, because this is a bigger leap than going from handwriting to word processing, Dave. So I get that. It's a bigger leap, so I'm more careful about it. But at the end of the day, I think it's going to make me much more productive than when I used to handwrite all of my letters and then go back and forth and be typed, retyped. It literally would take 3 days to write an email you can now do in 3 minutes. Back in 1980, when I started practicing law, and 3 days to 3 minutes. I think we're going to see the same kind of accelerated improvement in productivity, maybe even greater. But, that took like 40 years to get. I think the big thing is, as we were talking about before, Mary and I and Kaylee, is that like time is accelerating. This is an exponential curve. Now, I've studied about this intellectually. David, I've read your stuff on it and all the scientists, exponential. But now we're actually living it, these kind of improvements happening so fast. I'd love to hear your comments about that, David. I mean, do you think we're in an exponential time here?
Well, I mean, nothing is exponential in the real world, because you always run out of something. I think the interesting thing that's quite an open question right now is, are we close to sort of leveling out on, generative AI in general or LLMs in particular? One of the issues that scientists have raised is we're starting to use a substantial proportion of the text that's available online to train these models, and so it's just not clear that you can continue anything like the same rate of progress. Now, there's also other kinds of progress. There's progress on the design of the algorithms and the structure of the neural networks and whatnot, and we may get more out of that. But I think, the more fundamental question we have is, what are the limits of building models that simply imitate large amounts of text? Now, ChatGPT has gone a little beyond that, and it's imitating conversations as well, but from a much smaller set of training data than the imitation of the sort of structure of language. So, I would probably personally put bets on we'll see a bit of a slowing down of the progress here, but we already have had immense progress, which we're very far from absorbing into our routine technology and workflows. I think I'm actually, curiously, maybe a little more upbeat than you are, Ralph, about the possibilities of LLMs in drafting legal documents. Not that they're likely to do anything but the most routine ones autonomously, but I do think that there's, one of the advantages of the applications and the laws, there's a lot of highly structured documents that get produced. Legal briefs, contracts. There's also a lot of documents where there's substantial repetition and reuse. And there's already obviously a lot of technologies for drawing on, say, existing contracts, for either analyzing or synthesizing new ones. LLMs will make that even more effective. And, I'd be curious your opinion of this. My sense is even the existing sort of contract drafting technology that did not use LLMs had only barely begun to penetrate into legal practice. I think it'll take, a lot of engineering and building of LLMs into enterprise software and designing of legal workflows. But I wouldn't be surprised if in 10 years, maybe 5 years, we see, I'll throw a number out there, like an 80% reduction in the average time to generate, routine contracts in enterprises. So I'd be curious of your reaction to that.
And you think I'm pessimistic? I mean, I'm out there saying in 10 years we'll probably have artificial general intelligence.
Oh, okay, all right. I missed it.
I'm like, well, of course it's gonna, and it already is. But I mean, you make a good point. There was already stuff without the AI enhancement, and no lawyers prepares a notice of deposition or simple things like that. That hadn't been done by lawyers in a long time. That's done by paralegals, assistants. And so I'm talking about, when I talk about preparing briefs, I'm not talking about canned things.
Okay.
But what lawyers do is a lot more complicated than scientists think. And no doubt, what scientists do is a lot more complicated than what lawyers think you guys do. And that's just the way it is. I mean, I think I heard there was a $1 million bounty reward for anyone who would dare use ChatGPT in a Supreme Court oral argument. Apparently, anybody who can argue in front of the Supreme Court, their reputation's worth more than $1 million to them. So, nobody's taken up that challenge. I mean, heck, they barely take up the challenge of using it in a traffic court. And so, there's a lot, to me, that's more interesting. That's not my thing, is drafting contracts. So it's a little outside my field, and I will do something that, you never hear ChatGPT saying, that is, I really don't know. I'm not sure. I'm more of a litigator kind of person like that. And I think there's more to litigation and persuading people than you might think. And that's different than contract analysis. And, a lot of it's boilerplate over and over again stuff. But I mean, I've heard, who was it? Was it William Weber, whom another great scientist I greatly admire. I mean, his thing is, well, any high school kid can determine whether a document's relevant or not. And, and so, I had a great exception to that. Now, it's true. You can tell the chicken sandwich menu is not relevant to a case on antitrust, or probably not, but it's the every now and then you get these gray areas that it does require legal skill. And, I think, have we reached the point, and I never agree that any high school kid could do doc review. But are we getting close to the point where AI may be able to do document review? I mean, is it that smart enough? That's a more interesting question to me. And I think the jury is not out, but I'm going to look into that very carefully. And I assume you and your team are looking into that probably right now as well.
Yeah, I mean, we're looking into that. We're aware of both law firms and technology companies who are, you know, reporting preliminary results that are extremely impressive. I mean, I think your kind of cascading view is right, though. I mean, there are some document review tasks that a high schooler could do because it really is just sort of the genre of the document. All right, I mean, this is clearly bulk email, it's selling you something, and this, and then with machine learning of the sort that we deployed in technology assisted review systems, there were then, you know, sets of documents which, like with a high school student, you could sort of plausibly trust the decision for machine learning. I think what we'll get with LLMs is we'll expand the range of documents on which an automated system can make a decision that we'll trust, but there's always going to be a residue that an attorney is going to have to look at. So it's going to be additional cost reductions. It's not going to be taking the attorneys out of the loop in doc review. And I suspect you probably would agree that that's a likely outcome.
No, I do. I mean, the beauty of TAR done correctly is it eliminated the chicken sandwich in the bulk email. Heck, you don't need TAR to do that. Any simple keyword search, it's been around since the 80s, could do that. And so you narrow it down to the gray area, and that's where the lawyers earn their bucks. You know, hey, it's talking about this thing that is the subject matter, but it's talking about it in a different way. And you need to understand the law. You need to understand maybe the latest law, which that's a problem. And so it does get more nuanced when you get into the gray areas, and you got the AI getting rid of the obvious stuff. Well, that's obviously irrelevant. And so, you know, that's the filtering it down to the tough stuff so that the lawyer's time won't be wasted on the things that any high school kid could tell you that, or, you know, even a scientist could tell that's irrelevant, you know. But it will, you know, focus the time and make more use of an attorney's time, and therefore on that level it's going to be a better result, even though productivity wise it may seem less, but you know, I've never believed in using the $50, $40 an hour attorney anyway for document review. Number one, I think it's insulting to only pay a lawyer that much, and number two, that can be done just as well by a machine with predictive coding. And so that same thing is just going to continue and continue, and the lawyers that know how to work with the AI will do well, and their time will be well spent. And the poor lawyers that were, you know, shackled with having to look at all these irrelevant documents day in and day out for years on end. I mean, what a horrible job. And so, you know, I think that's a big relief that humans aren't, their valuable time is not wasted doing that sort of stuff, particularly humans that have a law degree. And so I'm all for automation of these tedious tasks, and that's what I see happening.
So I'm curious, Ralph, you said a minute ago, and you reminded me that you have sent some what I would consider pretty outrageous things in some of your blog posts. You said you think we'll see AGI in 10 years. And I don't think I'll see it in my lifetime, and I don't even think it's a well-defined notion. But I'm curious, I mean, how does that belief cash out in the, I mean, you've started a law firm with your son, and like you said, there's 3 Loseys, so I guess I know.
No, I didn't start it, David. They just took on the old timer. They started it about 10 years ago. I've been with another slightly larger firm, but I didn't start it. Just, you know, you're hallucinating there a little bit. And I was hallucinating when I said 10 years. And really, my blog speaks for itself. It said, I think it was a 5 to 10% chance that in 5 to 10 years. That's specifically, I'm starting to remember. You get carried away. We're humans, just like ChatGPT does. It gets carried away and said because it sounds good. But the reality is, I'm more conservative than that. But the head of Google, who wrote about the singularity and is highly respected, believes we're going to live forever, et cetera. He believes it'll be here in 10 years. Elon Musk, everybody seems to be panicking. All these scientists are going, oh my God, this is much more dangerous than nuclear weapons. We've got to stop ChatGPT before it takes over the world and creates staples everywhere. You know, so it's like, you know, I'm more conservative than a lot of the scientists, but I do believe it is coming, I hope, within my lifetime, because I think we need improvements over humans. I'm not impressed by human intelligence. You know, we need cures to cancer. We need cures to the environment. We need a better peacekeeping. There's a whole lot of things that are beyond our intelligence to figure out right now. And so I'm hopeful for it. But no, I don't believe 5 to 10 years. I mean, Mary, you may remember better than I do.
Yeah, you gave it a 5 to 10%
Okay.
chance, but he didn't tell us his confidence interval. So
all right, so let's take that 5 to 10% chance, which I would disagree with. But then, how do you envision the you know your son will be practicing 10 years from now? Do you think there's a 5 to 10% chance that there'll be no lawyers then? You know, that everything, you know, that the economy will be changed beyond recognition, that, you know, you personally worry about his future. He's a nice guy. You know?
No. There'll be lawyers that know how to work with AI, for sure. I mean, you think the AI is just going to do everything? That's not what AGI means. I mean, you said you don't know what it means. I mean, read some of the books.
Well, I said it's not well defined.
Well, yeah, but no, I mean, I don't think everybody's suddenly going to go on vacation and not do anything like that. What was that great Disney movie about you know, where everybody was living on a cruise ship, getting fat, dumb, and ugly, and having the AI do everything?
Oh, that was Wall-E, actually.
Wall-E. Yeah, and I don't think that's likely to happen any more than I think the Terminator is likely to happen either. I think the reality is going to be, you know, it's going to be a combinatory, multimodal world of hybrid man-machine use. You know, I love these words that keep springing up.
So we have a question. I think this will be a Dave question. Do y'all think that larger LLMs are better than smaller, more specific LLMs? So we'll start with you, Dave, and then go to you, Ralph.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's going to be dependent on the task. You know, the size question is going to be tricky, because this is an area where the algorithms are moving very quickly in terms of reducing the size of networks. But I think I'm going to interpret your question a little bit differently, which is, are task-specific LLMs trained from narrower sets of data going to be more valuable than broad-based ones? And I think technically what we're likely to see is broad-based ones are used as a starting point. Mm-hmm. You'll then see tuning of the LLM for specific task, you know, whether that's contract synthesis or document review or brief writing or whatnot. You know, and, you know, this is an area that an incredible amount of engineering is going on right now, because there's both tuning of the parameters of the model on specialized data, but then there's this whole other approach of what's called prompt engineering, where you say, you know, you could combine, say, an outline of a contract, say, with, you know, past examples of contracts. You know, again, Ralph's written several times about the issues with the size of the window you have there, but there's multiple kinds of tuning that are being done right now to adapt LLMs to particular tasks. And I do think that's going to be important. I think we don't know to what extent, you know, tuning on specialized data versus prompt engineering, probably both of those things are going to be important. I do think that certainly one thing that large law firms are aware of is they have a, you know, vast repositories of legal documents that they have produced in the past, and I know a number of them are thinking about how they can exploit those to you know, both to train systems of themselves. Is there any sort of model where they might want to share that information outside? But there's certainly great interest in things like exploiting the internal data that's already been produced, even to do things like, okay, we want to not just produce documents more quickly, but we want to enforce certain style. We want to enforce certain kinds of limitations on what we're going to let our attorneys do. So I think there's a ton of interesting, both technical and workflow issues there.
No,
Ralph,
Dave, I agree
have
with
a
you.
sense?
I agree with you. I mean, I was looking at it today, the plugins. So the new version of ChatGPT 4 has both online internet connection as one available alternative. And this is a pro version. It's still not that much, $20 a month, which allows it to go onto the internet and do things. And then another version, you can't do both at once yet, but I imagine the day will come when you can, is where you use prompts instead of using just the ability to do web browsing. They call it the prompts. And it started off, and I looked at it, I think it was it just came out last week. Everything was last week. And I looked at it, and there was maybe 30 plugins that were available right away that were OpenAI had met their protocols and was on, this is OpenAI's list, not something you can go out on Google, but OpenAI plugins. As of June 5th, there were 231 plugins. You've already got to do a search to kind of find the ones you want, or you can search for the most popular ones. One of them is Wolfram. I mean, is that something, by the way, David? I mean, I've heard scientists say, well, this is really great. You like that? You use that?
Yeah, I mean, you know, that's, I've certainly used it for solving equations and things like that. And there's like commercial versions that people use in engineering and whatnot. You know, I think it's going to be very interesting. You know, I see we've got a question that came in. What happens if AI gets connected to the internet? Well, Ralph just said it's already happened, but you know, there's a lot of different ways that you could build a system that's exploiting both an LLM and exploiting large collections of data online. You know, one of which is to address the recency issue, where you may not have trained on recent news, things like that, so it's not incorporated in the model. I think there's a lot of possibilities, and people are certainly exploring the whole sort of notion of using this to correct for hallucinations. So, I mean, the LLM may generate, you know, something it thinks it's true, but then be able to sort of go out and retrieve documents and compare those. And I'm staying away from anything that would imply that it's going to go out and read those documents or understand them or check its own work, because this is all still, you know, statistical modeling. But I do think we'll see a lot of interesting progress there.
Well, yes, and you know, I agree with one of the cautionary notes that David sounded too, is that we're not sure how fast this will continue. We're sure it's been pretty fast in the last 7 months, but I mean, and I don't really think even OpenAI knows, although there's rumors that there is a 5 in development. But you know, every time you go back and upgrade it, it's not like you can just add on, as I understand it, Dave. And if you know more, feel free to correct me. But you have to go all the way back and retrain the whole thing. So if it wants to add beyond the cutoff of 21, let's say it picks June 1st, 2023, that's a huge effort then. It can't just, add on like you might have an addendum to a contract. Oh, no, you got to go all the way back and retrain all of it. So it's not so easy. And when I say it's got web browser capacity, it's not like it's, quote, integrated into it. So, no, you know, that would be astounding. It does not have that ability, and I'm not sure it'll ever have that ability in its current form. So there are limitations to it. It's not like, you know, it is not AGI, and it's got a long way to go. And I talk about this a lot in my blog, the different limitations I've run into experimenting with it, including, for me, being verbose and having big depositions, databases. I'm a e-discovery guy like most people on the phone. I'm used to a million emails and stuff like that. Well, it can't handle large data volumes. And the latest thing is, I think it just came out today, is that it can't even handle the continue function. I'm sure, Dave, you've used ChatGPT. You know that was like, very powerful. You know, we do that all the time. We'd ask it a question, but it could only give so many words in response, and it would differ each time. It's not like a rule. And it used to then, it would stop mid-sentence even. And then you, the user, would go continue. Then it would finish the sentence and keep on going. And now all of a sudden, that doesn't work anymore. There is no continue. And that's where you'll see in the blog, I have my session, my chat session. I say, why'd you do that? You know, and it gave me this answer, which I think is BS. I said, well, we've decided it was more efficient and may not work for you. And, like I said in my blog, I feel like I'm being snowed here. I've taken a lot of hostile depositions, and I felt like, This was a witness just making stuff up to cover up the fact that it no longer can do stuff. So, there are limitations to it, and OpenAI wants you to explore it and find these. And so does the President of the United States of America wants you to come, for instance, to DEF CON in Vegas in August and participate.
You're going, aren't you, Ralph?
And I am going. I'm answering the call for the good of humanity so that we can make sure that our AI is ethically aligned, and point out to it when you think it's lying, when you think it's hallucinating, when you think it's making stuff up. Because we want the truth. We want accurate information. We don't want ChatGPT to go off the rail. And so that's what this thing I've written about, and that's what Biden and the team that are advising him, these cybersecurity experts, to come and try and figure out ways to break it so that we can keep it ethically aligned, and it will not tell you how to make a bomb. It will not tell you how to make an AK-40. It won't tell you a lot of things that we don't think. You should just be able to ask an AI to tell you how, what is the formula, how do I go about building a small nuclear device, things like that. There are obvious things that it has to be put in a jail to do. And so that's what we're worrying about now, is to keep it in a jail, keep it telling the truth. Don't be making up judges on me. Don't make up cases, and this is going to take time to make sure that we have it properly in jail, and that these smart alecks that don't care can't figure out ways to jailbreak and get it to do bad things, like to lie to the public and make them think black is white, and make them think they should do this, that, and the other thing that obviously they shouldn't do. These are the cutting edge issues now.
So, Dave, we have a question that says, it seems like these LLM models are only as good as the data they ingest. Will we see data for sale signs?
Oh, we're already seeing them. In fact, just in the past week or so, maybe a little longer, Twitter has greatly increased the price of access to its APIs. Reddit just announced that they're increasing, limiting their APIs, increasing the price to access it. I think everybody who has large collections of textual data is thinking about how to exploit it. Certainly, the big publishers have all been aware of this for several years. You can absolutely assume that the big legal publishers are thinking extensively about this, because of course they've already been used to thinking about the value of their data. So yeah, and I think individual enterprises are also going to think about data differently. This has implications for information governance, say, because this changes the equation of what kinds of value you may get from enterprise data. So yeah, I think excellent question, and I think everybody is thinking about what kind of data for sale sign they might put out.
Yeah, and to that end, Ralph, Rob Robinson put together a list of the sites that were crawled by the Google crawler, and yours were you scored 2 hits on that in the upper levels there.
I'm thinking of asking for $1 a token. Seems like a fair price to me. No, honestly, to be truthful, I was just flattered to see I was right behind the FTC. 740,000 tokens, and I think they have a good taste. What can I tell you? But is that going to stop me from being open source? Probably not. There's other ways I can make a living to provide services that I don't have to sell it. And there's other ways for ChatGPT to get to case law. For instance, Pacer. There's been a lot of lawsuits over that, and Pacer is open access. And I don't think they have Pacer in there yet. I don't think they have the case law collection that lawyers need. And so the people with the advantage, we know who they are, that have this case law. This is public. Case law, there's no secret to what a judge writes. It's public knowledge, and it should be open source. But the secret part is when they put head notes on it and comments and distinguished and all that stuff they add. But the day will come when AI follows the hacker credo of keeping things open as much as possible, and so that the public information, which is what judges write, it's always public, except for arbitration. A lot of times that's private, but that depends on the agreement. that will be a part of the data. But while I'm on it, we said ethical. Be really careful now. Don't be careful with putting in client data as an attorney. We all know we have a high duty of confidentiality. You can't really put secret stuff. You can't ask ChatGPT, how do I improve upon this formula for Coke? That would be automatic malpractice, etc. You got to avoid that. On the other hand, you have a duty of competence. So you got to learn this stuff because it isn't going away. How fast it goes, I don't know. And then finally, we've already touched upon this duty of fairness to court and opposing counsel. And I've heard people say, well, I don't have to tell them I'm using ChatGPT. I don't tell them I'm using Word or WordPerfect or Google or something. And it's different. And I think you do. And I think you should tell your client that, you're using these shortcuts and use it probably as a bragging point. But you should not hide the fact and charge them what would have taken you 5 hours to prepare this memo, you only did it in 30 minutes without checking it. That's not right. That's unethical. And the bar will get you for that, and so will the judges, and so they should.
So I think it's interesting, how we're reproducing some of the discussions we had around TAR, of course. Are you required to reveal that you're using it and whatnot? So that's intriguing. I mean, I think I'm not an attorney, obviously, but I tend to think with the current state of the technology, it's, people are going to have to think very carefully about what writing means, right? And to what extent you're synthesizing something without having gone, because I think, one of the philosophical things this brings up is, what is writing doing? To you. So if you're an attorney who's writing something, you're both creating a document, but you're changing your mind, your brain as well. You're developing knowledge internally, which will then let you answer questions from a client. And so, how much is the document the only product, and how much is the change in the attorney the product? So I'd be curious on your take on that, Ralph.
Well, I'm not sure I understand that question. Changing the attorney. I mean, good attorneys have always used whatever, it's the duty of competence. If there's word processors, you use word processors.
Yeah.
And I didn't, what we did.
Ralph, I think he's talking about writing as a way to change one's own perspective or framing.
Yeah, you change the way you think when you write.
That's true. I mean, that's true, but that's always been true. I mean, my father-in-law practiced law in the 30s. I'm sure he did the same thing when he hand wrote out his briefs. He read the handwriting and goes, you know what? That argument's not so good. So I'm not sure that's any big change. So maybe I'm not following you. I mean, we've always gone through drafts, and, it'd be very rare that somebody just writes a brief and files it. They're going to write a brief, put it down for a few days, study it, and go, this is not so good. They'll send it to their partner to take a look at it. So I don't know if you know how the law works, but it's never been, boom, we're done.
Oh, yeah.
So there's always been an interactive process. And, associates come and argue with partners, and partners argue with associates. And there's always been a chat going on, if you will. So that's not new. The fact that I've got a smart associate that works for $20 a month, that's new. But that's all it is. It's an old process. It's being continued.
Well, this is fascinating. We are fast approaching the top of the hour, and I want to make sure that our listeners know exactly how to get in touch with you. We do have some buttons on the website. But Ralph, if somebody wanted to just reach out to you directly, what's your preferred way?
So if you actually want legal advice, you can use my legal email address, which is ralph@losey.law. But don't use that address if you just want to chat about something like that. Use my personal email address, ralph.losey@gmail.com, which was the address that OpenAI would not accept when I wanted the security stuff, which I wrote about that recently. But, I'm active on LinkedIn. Send me a message on LinkedIn. I like that. I've been using that more and more. I'm even still on Twitter. And, of course, my blog, which I have a new handle for it now, ediscovery.team. That's an extension, no hyphens or anything like that, ediscovery.team. And leave me a comment there. So I'm easy to get a hold of. But do not, I don't give legal advice to anybody until they've passed clearance and have, probably paid a retainer too. So don't ask for advice, unless you want to go through the formal intake procedures.
Very good. And Dave, how should people reach out to you? What's your preferred mode?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn as well. Always happy to be contacted there. Or dave.lewis@redgravedata.com. You can come to the redgravedata.com website as well, and there's contact information. Certainly look forward to hearing from people. I don't give legal advice under any circumstance.
And as it should be. And Kaylee, are you here with us?
I absolutely am. And for those of you still here, great job, Ralph and Dave. So insightful. We'll have to have you back on this ongoing generative AI LLM conversation. And for our attendees, in your console, you'll see a paperclip at the bottom middle of your screen. You'll see a link to learn more about our new platform On24's engagement tool descriptions to help you better engage with us during our webinars. There's also a link to follow Ralph Losey's brilliant eDiscovery team blog. You don't want to miss a thing. And you can learn more about our brilliant scientist, Dave Lewis, by following the link to his Redgrave bio. And then up next tomorrow, June 7th at 1 p.m., Cats and Dogs Working Together, eDiscovery and Forensics. Back to you, Mary.
Thanks, Kaylee. Well, Kaylee and I thank Dave Lewis and Ralph Losey for this wonderful educational and provocative session. Our thanks to the EDRM community for your kind attention, and tune in next time for more on the EDRM Global Webinar channel. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Mary.
Thanks guys.
Bye-bye.